Good afternoon. It is wonderful to see so many smiling faces here, coming together as a community to hear from these very, very talented storytellers. So it's my pleasure to welcome you to Double Take, Stories That Make You Think Twice, our community storytelling event. I'm excited to be here this afternoon so that we can come together to learn from and to hear from these wonderful members of our community. To give you a little bit of background, Double Take was launched by my predecessor and friend, Jim Ryan, in 2016, with the belief that storytelling is a powerful way to grow and learn from one another. Even in a strong community like ours, there's oftentimes a good deal that we assume but don't know about one another, and our stories go untold. So this is a wonderful opportunity to actually hear those stories firsthand. Today marks the 6th time we're having this event, and is one of my favorite events of the year. And as I can see from so many smiling faces who've been here many times, this event means such a great deal to so many of us. While today's event is most visible by the stories that we're about to hear, I also want to acknowledge and thank the many, many people who've been involved in helping to prepare for this, including those who were involved with the workshop and the studio recordings that were held earlier this semester. I first want to thank, where is he? Iman Rastagari for his leadership and commitment. You're going to hear from him in just a moment, but this event would not have been possible without his commitment and the commitment of his team and making this come together. I also want to thank Brendan Russell, Kevin Bohm, Liz Thurston, and many of our colleagues in the Office of Student Affairs for their efforts to bring Double Take to life. And thank you to the committee that had the very difficult job of choosing which stories we were going to hear today. And finally, I want to recognize and thank the 8 storytellers we are about to hear from. Sharing a personal story is truly a brave act, and I'm grateful that you have chosen to share your story with us. I know that we, as the audience, will support these courageous members of our community with warmth and with openness. I now invite Iman to the stage to talk a bit more about the power of storytelling and to tell you a bit more about the efforts behind the event today. So thank you for being here, and please enjoy this wonderful event.
Thank you, and good afternoon. So I want to start by adding some gratitude of my own. First to Dean Long for ensuring that Double Take ran again this fall, and the rest of the Dean's office for their support and assistance. Some thanks to Barry Walsh and the team in communications and marketing for their talent and support. The folks in the TLL and IT for lending their resources to this project. Our video team, Elio Pajares, Haneen Abdo, and Elias Polchera, my wonderful intern, Jackie Kim, and special thanks to my amazing team of story coaches, many of whom are Double Take alumni, Fallon Blossom, Eli Center, Naomi Greenfield, Sarah Polnow, and especially Rilda Kissel. And I want to thank all of the people who have lent their moral support to me in this program over the years, and especially this fall. As you can see, it takes a community to bring Double Take to life. And it is because of and for this community, the HGSE community, that this amazing project exists. For those of you who don't know, Double Take is a unique program here at HGSE that allows students, faculty, and staff to all equally participate in a series of unique experiences, all centered around the power of storytelling. It starts with a public storytelling workshop, and then we hold recording sessions where any member of the community can sign up for a time in the Gutman Video Studio where they share their story on camera and receive coaching in the moment. The bravery, the vulnerability, and genuine expression of humanity I see every time someone shares a story in the studio leaves me humbled and reminds me why this community is so amazing. 8 of those stories have been selected to be shared live on stage tonight, and I cannot wait for you to hear them. The Double Take program has some impressive numbers behind it. Over the 6 times we've run it, 195 students, staff, and faculty have recorded stories. The videos of the events have garnered more than 100,000 views online. But in the end, Double Take has always been about one person daring to stand up in front of their community and tell a story. The story can be about anything. The only requirement is that the story is about them. And because it's through hearing other stories that we build a stronger community. Humans crave a good story. Our brains are wired for it, and we look for it everywhere. Story allows us to connect on a deeper level. We discover allies we didn't know we had, learn from others' experiences, and by doing so, we draw ever closer and more connected to each other. There's a unique connection forged between storyteller and audience. Even when we know the person telling the story, we learn about a different side to them, something that makes us do a double take, that makes us think twice, and helps us to see the fullness of those around us. Tonight, I have the honor of turning the stage over to 8 members of the HGSE community, each with a powerful and unique story to tell. They inspire me, and I can't wait for all of you to hear their stories too. Welcome to Double Take.
People often ask me, why do you do this diversity and inclusion work? Like, why do you like it so much? I often have an answer. Rarely do I ever tell the answer. Always there's a story to share. I'm good at it. I went to school for it. I'm passionate about it. Never do I tell the story. The story is deeply seated, charts my entire history, and is filled with a little bit of pain. Because who doesn't work to heal themselves? Let's get started. Zoom in. It's elementary school, recess, outside, playing. Miss Mary, Matt, you're a faggot. Stunned, shocked. Am I? I really just think it's a better idea to play hand games with the girls than play football on the concrete with the boys. Zoom in again. Still, elementary school. Where? The classroom. Doing what we do, learning. You talk white. Mind blown. Full confusion takes over my body. I live in Baltimore. I go to elementary school on the west side. It's mostly black folk, people of color. I don't even have cable. Fast forward. Where are we this time? Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Family vacation. My dad, my mom, and I. What are we doing? We're walking that main drag, just one over from the boardwalk. Just me and mom, taking in shops and stores, getting a sense of where we are. Zoom. What passes by? A car. No, a Jeep rather, filled with 4 white men. One yells out, "Hey, Aunt Jemima!" Stunned, shocked, wanting to chase that Jeep down, yet feeling quite immobile. Fast forward again, zoom in to high school. It's time to come out. I'm gay, normal, right? It's time to let mom know. I sit her down, and I have prepared everything, written it all out, ready to say to her those really hard words, I'm gay. I do. She, deer in the headlights. A little stunned, I continue to read. She's taking it okay. I have to go to work. I work at Structure, not Express. I'm a little old. I come home. She calls me into her room. She wants to talk. She has a lot to say. She's been crying. She still is crying. I recall her sharing to me, "The thought of you with another man makes me wish I were dead. I lay here trying to go to sleep, and I can't. If you were to ever bring another man into this house, I think I would have a heart attack." Devastated, crushed, seeing the end of a relationship with a person that I love so dearly right in front of my eyes. Fast forward, graduate school, like many of you, University of Vermont. I'm moving, walking about, College of Ed building to main campus. A couple of friends are with me, waiting to cross the street. The car stopped. The driver leans over to roll down the window and yells out, "You look like Terrell Owens." Side note, I don't know what's up with white people yelling at black folk what they look like. Stunned again, immobile. Who is Terrell Owens? Fast forward. Where are we this time? We're in Chicago. It's my first job post-master's degree. And what are we doing? We're dancing. We're dancing at a place that's sometimes a bar, sometimes a restaurant, and sometimes a dance floor. I mistakenly knock over a drink. It was misplaced, didn't actually belong there. Person confronts me. We engage. Any other white person would have brought me another drink. Any other white person? Really? Because I can show you a person right now. My mind flooded with ideas of what I could do, except the consequences are way too grave to bear in that moment. So I do nothing. I calm down. I have had a drink or two. End scene. My life, like yours, is likely filled with sentiments, moments, and times of feeling a little other, a little different, a little outside. Our pain spaces are often our healing spaces, and our healing spaces are certainly our pain spaces. This is the story as to why I do this work. Thank you.
It was about mid-August. I was new in Cambridge. I had just moved from Southern California. I decided to check out a church, and on this particular Sunday, I decided to take a bus. So I got on the 77 line, and I sat on the edge of my seat, closely listening to the bus announcements. At one point of the bus ride, the bus announcements played for 3 stops without a pause. Well, obviously, the bus could not have covered those 3 stops in the span of 30 seconds. I was alarmed. Oh my gosh, where am I actually? Is this bus announcements actually aligned? At that moment, I had a choice to make. I could either sit in my seat, wondering where in the world I was, worrying about if I can make it in time and get off at the right stop, or I could reach out for help. I decided to do the latter. I turned around because I knew there was somebody sitting behind me. I didn't know what this person looked like or what this person was doing, but the fact that this person was not causing any disruption of sort gave me a chance to take a leap of faith. Excuse me, could you please tell me where we actually are? I think the announcements slightly might be off. This person, who sounded like a woman about the same age as me, answered me where we were, and we also got into a spontaneous conversation. It turned out not only we were going to the same church, but we had a lot in common. We're both new to the greater Boston area, and we're both from California. This is how my friendship with Selena began. So now we're about 4 months out from that moment, and we've become friends who text each other at least once a week, and I'm happy and honored to tell you that she is somewhere here in the audience today. Many people, whether explicitly or implicitly, ask me, Miso, how do you do this and that? Isn't being blind so challenging? The answer is yes and no. The answer is yes when people, including my friends and even my brothers, whom I dearly love, they forget to post pictures without any descriptions, so then my Facebook and Instagram will cleverly tell me, no automatic alt text available, photo. Well, thank you very much. You may have posted pictures of your cute puppies doing silly things, or maybe some sumptuous meal that you just had, but I have no idea. And the answer is also yes when some people decide that they know where I'm going better than I do myself. Like this one lady who insisted that I get on the Braintree Line train when I actually needed to get on the Ashmont train. It seems that some people think that I need help in everything just because I am blind and they are not. But the answer is no, it is not challenging to be blind. When I get to meet an airport worker who, throughout the course of guiding me to the gate, tells me her story of wanting to become an EMT at one point, and she is working at the airport to save money so that she can complete her schoolwork. The answer is no, it is not challenging when a little girl approaches me asking, why do you have to use this long stick? And I get a chance to tell her that it is actually called white cane, and it helps me navigate around independently as a blind person. And of course, the answer is no when I get to meet cool people like Selena and get to form a meaningful friendship that goes beyond that moment. So friends, as a blind person, I might not be able to enjoy the supposedly funny cat videos or enjoy the supposedly majestic artworks that are hanging in the walls of art museums without any descriptions or tactile representation, but I get to experience and appreciate the beauty of human connections that are formed when we approach each other with mutual respect and open mind toward our differences. Thank you.
So I work here, and I work with a ton of different people over email. But in my office, it's not in one of the main buildings, and so I actually see people only a few times a year. But these days, when I see people, they say, oh my gosh, congratulations, because I am, in fact, 6 months pregnant. And they say, wow, is this your first child? And I say, I don't have any kids at home. And did you see that thunderstorm last night? That was crazy. Because this isn't my first child. Less than a year ago, when I was working here, I was 5 months pregnant, so a little bit less than I am right now, when I had a late-term abortion of my son, Bako. So that is basically the most awkward thing you can possibly say to someone who is just trying to make small talk. People love babies. They want to be on your maternity leave mailing list, and they want the cute picture. And I have a stereotypical picture in the hospital bed, holding the baby, and my husband's like reaching around the IVs. We definitely did not do a mass mailing of that one. I was put on a number of mass mailings. Harvard sent this colorful flyer. Congratulations! Check out our dependent care benefits. And it came like the same day as just this huge pile of bills, because death is actually really expensive. Even my office, which has the nicest people in it, didn't exactly know what to do, and I do not blame them. We had so many tragedies last year, and I remember getting the group drugstore card and just failing, like just staring at it and trying to go from like, whoa, hope you're bundled up for the bus, to actually, I know you're a person, and people shouldn't have to lose sisters. I wanted my drugstore card to say, we know you had a son and that you're sad. But of course, most people didn't. See, to me, every day for months had been about the baby. Every morning, I would be in the hospital, on the phone with one of this huge team of doctors, or on the phone with the insurance company. And every evening, I'd be at work late, making up for the mornings, and I'd just race to work, and I'd open up my email, and there would be this 25 email chain about a $7.30 parking reimbursement, which isn't even exactly my job. And I would just stare at it. And it would occur to me that to most people, it was a Tuesday. Yeah, on Tuesdays, people have a question about their budget. And on Tuesdays, people have a data request. And any chance they could get that by 11? And on Tuesdays, I had been there, answering emails. And, my colleague, her father's just spiraling into dementia. And she's here too, answering emails. And my colleague, whose husband has been in and out of McLean all year, and my colleague who's struggling with IVF, and my colleague with chronic health issues who probably needs another surgery soon, they're all here too. I think sometimes people say, those admin people, they're really boring. And they talk about the weather. Maybe they talk about what's good at the cafeteria. And sometimes, maybe. But sometimes I think we're trying to be professional, and we're trying to give other people the gift of just getting to have a Tuesday.
So before I begin, I need to start with an acknowledgement of my mom and my dad. Para mi mamá y mi papá, esto es por ustedes. What do you see when you look at me? Exactly 1 month ago, I had an appointment at the Harvard Health Center, the counseling center. I was walking on Kirkland Street when I realized that my shoe was untied. I knelt down to tie my shoe, and then I heard a voice. Is there anything else I can do for you? I looked and turned to the voice. I saw a man standing in the middle of a long driveway to what appeared like $1 million home. He was wearing work clothes, company t-shirt, khaki pants, dusty leather boots. He was carrying a basket with tools. I saw a van in the driveway. I'm never gonna forget who he was addressing. At the foot of the doorstep stood an older white lady, silver hair, in her 60s, maybe 70s. She looked at him with disgust and said, "Yeah, get the hell out of this country. Get out of here." Before I could even begin to process that moment, she turned her gaze to me and said, "And while he's at it, you get the hell out too. Get out of here." I quickly stood up, moved to the side so that she wouldn't see me anymore. My shoe was still untied. From afar, I heard the man say, "Oh, thank you for allowing me to work today." Tears were rolling down my cheeks at the humbleness with which he answered. My body was in shock. I felt like I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. I felt the anger building up inside of me. All I wanted to say was, "Who the fuck do you think you are? Why? Why are you saying this to us? We've done nothing wrong. I was born here. This is my country. And this is his country too." But I didn't say that. I stayed quiet. I heard the van engine start up, saw the van start pulling out. In that moment, the man and I paused, looked at each other for a moment, acknowledging what had just happened to us. We had been stripped of our dignity. Our identity had been taken away. We were humiliated. I looked at the steering wheel, and his hands reflected manual labor. The fine lines on his face, the wrinkles on his skin, reflected harsh working conditions. I know this because when I saw this man, his face, his hands, I saw a reflection of my father. My father, for the last 30 years, has worked manual labor in this country, my country. See, in those moments, I thought about the many times that he's been on somebody else's property, pouring cement on someone's driveway, shaping stone blocks for someone's patio. How many times my dad has had to ask a white jefe, "Is there anything else I can do for you?" How many times his dignity has been at the mercy of a possible white oppressor. In an attempt to restore this man's dignity, I looked at him and I said, "Lo siento mucho. I am so sorry." He looked at me and he said, "Suele pasar. It happens." He was used to it. I wasn't. And even though I faced racial microaggressions, this was the first time I had ever been the victim of an overtly racist verbal attack. My walk to the health center was a blur. My eyes were drowned in tears. I got there late. My counselor recalls that my face expressed fear. Once there, I was able to process and think, why wasn't I able to do more? Why was I immobile? Why was my voice taken? Now I know that society has conditioned me to stay quiet. What if I had said something? What if the woman called the man's boss and he lost his job? What if I engaged with her and she called the police? I knew my status in this country, but I didn't know the man's. What if by trying to help him, I ended up hurting him? What if I engaged with her and she went in her home and she had a gun there? Those were the things I was thinking. Those were the reasons why I stayed quiet. And I was mad at her. But I was actually more mad at myself. I was mad that I couldn't do more, say more. What angers me the most is that this happens every day to immigrants across this country. When people see immigrants, they see illegal. And let me tell you, there is no such thing as an illegal human being. I wish that when people see me, they see all of the layers that are there for me. They see all of my worth. I am a first-generation American, but I am also a responsible daughter, a loving sister, a fierce educator, a loyal friend. I am my parents' American dream. And I may never see this woman again, but I know there's many of them just like her out there. So I hope that when you look around you and when you look at me, you see us for who we truly are. Who do you see when you look at me? Thank you.
I remember walking down the street one day, confined to the boundaries of Prairie Avenue and El Segundo Boulevard, which was quite normal for me to do alone. This particular day, I was on my way to my mom and I's usual Sunday spot, Jim's Burgers, to get a patty melt with no onions for myself and some kind of steak and egg combo for my mom. And there was a man who was sitting at the corner. He was short, caramel complexion, and had piercing hazel eyes. They reminded me of a serpent. He kept making inappropriate comments about my body as I walked in front of him, and he eventually followed me inside the restaurant and forced me to sit next to him. And he asked me, "How old are you?" To which I whispered, 12. And he said, "Damn, little mama, you don't look 12." As if that was some type of excuse for the way that he was looking at me. So he repeated this phrase several times as he looked me up and down and licked his lips. His arm slithered from the top of my shoulder down my spine. A million fingers groped my newly formed breast and slid up, down, and in between my inner thighs. I was paralyzed, frozen, sitting in the middle of a diner where no one did anything to help me. I couldn't even help myself. So I left that place on my way home, and my thoughts were just racing 1,000 thoughts per minute, but on the outside, I was numb. I was silent. I didn't know what exactly to call what he had did to me, but I just knew that it wasn't right, that it was bad. And I knew that I couldn't tell my mom, because if I did, she'd be furious and she'd try to hunt him down. But first and foremost, I didn't want to break her heart. You see, my mom grew up in domestic violence, and she also had her own encounters with sexual violence when she was in college. So that compelled me even further to not say anything. So I gave her food, and I took mine, and I sat in front of the TV, and I cried silently while she read a magazine. Thank you. And so what I didn't realize from this experience is that it had started to work a number on me in the insides. And so I developed this intense mistrust of men and a fear of intimacy that hindered a lot of things in my life, I would say. But nonetheless, this is not a sob story. While I am 25 years old and I've never dated a person and I've never had sex before, I still am in the process of grooming myself, right? So like I said, this isn't a sob story. This is a leveling up story. This is a story of, this is a testimony. This is proof of God's hand and protection in my life, because even though I experienced what I experienced when I was younger, I'm still sitting here in front of you today to tell this story, because there's someone in this audience who needs to hear this story, because there's another person who also went through the same thing that I went through, and they may not necessarily have known what to call it, and they may not have known who to tell or what to do, and they just needed to know that they're not alone. And so, as I sit here today, I would say that I just am definitely in a different space in my journey. And I wouldn't be sitting here today if it wasn't for God constantly covering me and protecting me and shielding me from all the different things that can happen in the world. And this story is for my mom, who also went through more than I can even put in words. And this story is for the person that's sitting next to you and sitting behind you and in front of you. And I definitely had a lot more to say, but right now, I'm kind of just feeling what I feel. Which is annoying, right? You get this story, you practice it, you rehearse it, you're in the mirror like, oh, I know what I'm gonna say. I got this line for line, and then you're live, and then it's like, oh, shit. Oh, shit. But that story is just to say that our lives and the experiences that we have are not just for ourselves. You know, our stories are for other people so that they can learn from them, so that they can grow from them, and so that you can get to a place of restoration and healing within yourself. So I feel like, you know, now that I'm a little bit older and like I have a more intimate relationship with God, I could say that He has already restored my mind and restored my heart and restored my body and my faith and trust in people. And that's clearly why I'm here today, to share this story with you so that it can be impactful in some way, shape, or form. We are all unique and we are all fighters and we all have a story to tell. And I would say that while I have previously definitely felt silenced before, I'm now in a place where I'm speaking out and speaking over other people. This is why I'm an adjustment counselor. This is why I plan to disrupt the U.S. education system's role in preventing child sexual abuse. I feel like there definitely are more things that schools can do to inform their staff, the students that go there, and their families about ways to identify, interrupt, and report sexual assault. And that is my mission, and this is my story. This is my testimony. To God be the glory, and thank you all for listening.
I grew up in Colombia in the era of Pablo Escobar, back when Medellin was known as the most dangerous city in the world. And every night, me and my family, we get together and we have dinner, and then we watch the news. And it seems like every day there was a bombing, there was shootings, people got kidnapped, something would happen. And hundreds of people died or disappeared. It was like we were watching the weather forecast, but instead of trying to figure out if it was going to rain tomorrow, we were just trying to figure out what were the chances of getting shot tomorrow. Oh, honey, look, tomorrow, sunny, 72, 15% chances of shootings. We should take the kids to the beach or the park. That'd be nice. I wish I could leave this place. I wish I could live somewhere where I don't get mugged regularly. For Christmas, I'm going to ask my parents for an English-Spanish translator. It's going to be the most boring gift a kid has ever asked for. But I am going to teach myself English. I don't know why, but I'm going to do it. I started seeking out TV shows and cartoons in English, and I watch them with closed captioning, and I have my translator, and I translate all the words, and I'm like, oh, that's what that means. And then I start watching them over and over again and repeating the words so that my pronunciation is good. When I'm graduating high school, these 6 or 7 years of teaching myself English come pretty handy, actually, because I decided to apply for a international business management program in English. And against all odds, I passed the admissions English test, and I'm admitted. And even though the student loans are going to be huge, I'm like, you know what? This is going to be my way out of all this violence and out of all these economic difficulties. My first year of college, my parents get divorced, my mother moves to the United States, my dad moves to another city, and I'm all on my own. Luckily, my rudimentary English comes to the rescue again, and I get a job at a telecommunications company as an international operator. Back when people would make calls and they're like, oh, how can I direct your call? Oh, I'm calling this number in the United States. Cool. Let me help you with that. After 2 years of working full-time, going to school full-time, one night, I come home and I've had a long day. You know, one of those days where you had to walk to school, walk to work, walk by home because you can't afford the bus. And I'm hungry. And I open the refrigerator and I'm like, damn, all I have in there is a jar of butter. I'm like, all right. I open the pantry. Damn, all I have in here is a pack of saltines. And so I'm like, all right, I'm eating my saltines, butter, and water dinner, and I realize something. This sucks. I've had it, man. The violence, all the economic difficulties, I gotta figure out a way out of this. So the next day, I drop out of college, I quit my job, I borrow some more money from family, and I book a flight to the United States. I arrive on a Tuesday, and luckily my mother, who has been here for a couple of years, helps me find a cheap room in a small basement apartment. By Thursday, I have a full-time job at a car wash in Forest Hills. The following week, I have a part-time job at a McDonald's, and on the weekends, I'm bossing tables at a local restaurant. And I noticed that at the McDonald's that I'm working at, every night at the end of the shift, they're throwing out a bunch of food. Orders that were made by mistakes, they didn't want extra pickles, but the food is perfectly fine. And then at the car wash that I'm working at, I noticed that people around in the car wash are buying the same exact food at a nearby McDonald's. So I do what anybody in that situation would do. At the end of my night shift at my McDonald's, I bring the burgers back home with me, I put them in the fridge, and the next day I sell them to the people at my car wash. Right? I'm able to move to better paying jobs, and eventually I get a job with a catering company that is running a cafe at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. and I get a job in that cafe, and I start working at the kitchen, and then I get moved up to the register, and then I become the cafe manager. And I'm like, man, this is awesome. And that same year, I get to go back to school. I enroll in Bunker Hill Community College, and I'm like, man, life can't get any better than this, right? What else could I ask for? Well, as it turns out, a lot. Because from that job in the cafeteria, I applied for a job in the Office of Student Affairs, and spoiler alert, I got the job. Then I transferred my credits from Bunker Hill to the extension school, and again, I'm working full-time, going to school part-time, I'm loving it. And in 2014, I get a bachelor's degree from Harvard University. And it took me 15 and a half years, but I did it. I went from being a college dropout and an illegal immigrant to having a job at Harvard University and a degree from Harvard University. And I was like, man, this is awesome. Most importantly, though, I found an unbelievable partner, and I had the most fabulous baby girl. And most importantly, I'm not on my own anymore. I have a family. This year, the cherry on the top, if you will, is that I got admitted to the TIE master's program. And even though I just started, I'm learning so much from such awesome faculty like Karen Brennan and Rick Weisberg and Joe Blatt. I mean, Joe Blatt has his own Sesame Street puppet. I mean, that's VIP right there. And then, just to keep it real with y'all, sometimes, a lot of times, I feel exhausted, right? Especially when I go home and I turn on the TV and I see what's going on in places like Venezuela and Central America. And I turn on the news and I see our current administration taking babies away from their mothers. I once read that luck is when preparation meets opportunity. And I like to think that all those years ago, me teaching myself English, applying to a college that I definitely couldn't afford, moving to the United States, working really hard, that was me preparing myself for this tremendous opportunity to work at Harvard University and go to school here. But then I think about the millions of immigrants who, just like me, have worked so hard, some even harder, who just like me have prepared themselves. And not only is their opportunity being taken away from them, but their lives are being maliciously torn apart. And I can't help but wonder, why me? Why me and not them? Thank you.
School is where I learned to hate my hair. Unless my hair was straight, I dreaded walking into school, hearing the laughing and snickering at my hair's length, shape, curl pattern, texture, and kink. My hair had lived for others. I remember walking into school and hearing, "You have some nerve to be tender-headed with thick-ass hair like yours." On any given school night, I remember my mother and her wide-tooth comb, her bristle boar brush, her blue Magic Joe, right? Okay. Carefully, she'd layer my edges with the gelled concoction. My brown, unpermed, coiled strands brushed into her brown, clenched hands. I remember smelling with curiosity the peach-infused pomade that slicked my hair down, smooth in place, baby hairs and everything. But I also remember her saying, "You know your hair broke my comb." Secured tamed. But wondering why I couldn't let it be, I spent most of my elementary schooling in sectioned braids. Braids that kept my hair tempered, braids that kept my hair out of the way, and braids that kept my hair unnaturally untangled in class. I remember hearing, "Your hair is a little different. No offense, but how do you get it to look like that?" Later, I remember sitting in agony. I would clench in my 9-year-old fingers and toes. I held back the silent tears welling in my eyes, knowing that I could not relieve what felt like lightning striking, burning my scalp as the hairdresser layered into my strands a chemical relaxer. And then I remember hearing, "Wow, your hair is so pretty that way. It's so long and straight. Why don't you always wear it like that?" Every 6 weeks, I'd sit in grief at my hair for not growing easy, straight out of my head. My hair couldn't be controlled, and it left me no other option but to burn it into submission and acceptance. It wasn't until I came here at Harvard at 31, I left Baltimore, my hometown, to come here as a doctoral student that I chose to completely stop resisting and wear my hair naturally. I had never known my hair's curl pattern or texture or length. It had either been blow dried or hot combed or flat ironed down into place. I remember agonizing over the day's humidity and the rain forecast that threatened to expose the fraudulent me and my real roots. I remember incessantly wrapping my hair, hoping to preserve my straight strands for weeks. I remember avoiding standing in the sun for fear that my scalp's perspiration would betray me and wet my strands wavy. I hit a point where I could no longer live trapped under my hair, presenting my life for someone else. So I just cut away inches of limp, deadened, life-mimicking heat and chemically damaged strands to reveal densely full layers of brown, penciled, pinky-sized, fine coils crowning my head. I chose to no longer cover that part of me to fit in and navigate the world for others' comfort. Yeah, go ahead. This is our space, right? And then individually, I started noticing the women in my family letting go of the hair that no longer served them either. My mother, my sister, my aunt, my close friends. And then sometimes I'm stopped on a street, in a restaurant, in Gutman, by other coily-haired women of the diaspora who too chose to let go of the hair that no longer served them either. And sometimes I hear from them, "Wow, is that all of your hair?" Like, it grows like that naturally? Well, it's stunning. It's beautiful. Covering is when individuals downplay their outsider identities to blend into the mainstream. In school, I received the message and learned that to wear my hair in braids or any other style that protected its growth and nurtured it from breaking off was unacceptable, for my hair represented something more than hair in its natural state. As Black girls and women, we risk being perceived as messy, unkempt, unserious, unprofessional, if our hair dares to enter the room in any style that does not closely mimic straight strands. And just a few weeks ago in Gutman 303, honestly, I will tell you, I was told under the guise of giving me feedback, "You need to do something with your hair." And that was from someone who I thought would have been a mentor. But after that comment, I don't think so. But school's where I learned to hate my hair. This institutional repression of my hair's expression is merely an extension of my lived life as a Black woman in this country. But we could change that. What if we as teachers, school leaders, counselors, counter the message to Black girls that the way their hair comes in determines whether or not society lets them in? Meaning, in other words, what if we just question what is underneath this discomfort with Black women's hair? At the end of the day, in my head, I always hear, "Don't touch my hair," when it's the feelings I wear. "Don't touch my soul," when it's the rhythm I know. and don't touch my crown. Our hair is not an active assault on society's pillars of professionalism, exceptionalism, scholarship, nor beauty. It is simply our hair, from the way that it grows out of our crowns to the way that we choose to adorn and nurture it. So release that implicit hold on Black girls and their natural expression of light and of being. You let us lay, let us live, let us thrive, and ladies, let us rise in it.
As a gay guy, the only thing harder than coming out of the closet is going back into it. I grew up in a pretty conservative Catholic area, and so you can imagine when I came out in 10th grade that I had kind of a rough go at it, and I spent a lot of my undergraduate years working to sort of deconstruct the walls I had built up in high school. And then when I graduated, I had built up some self-esteem, so I pushed myself to apply for a Fulbright grant to go and teach English in Malaysia, and to my surprise, I was accepted. And Malaysia, for those who don't know, is a pretty diverse country within the region of Southeast Asia, but it is still a majority Muslim country, so the government operates under Sharia law, and Sharia law forbids homosexuality. So I recognized in accepting my Fulbright grant, I was going to have to go back into the closet for the year, and I spent my months before my flight prepping as best I could. I untagged myself on social media from any pride-based photos, and I downloaded 3 seasons of Drag Race on my hard drive, so I had them if I needed them. But nothing really could have prepared me for re-entering that state of anxiety. It's amazing to me in hindsight how quickly, once I was able to live authentically, I forgot what it felt like to not be able to do that. And so you can imagine then when I got to Malaysia, on top of having to go through this cultural adjustment, I was also processing these feelings of anxiety for the first time in 6 or 7 years. Fortunately, I had a really great mentor in Malaysia at my school. Her name was Rose. She was a Muslim Malay mother of 4, but she was also an English teacher, and she was a ravenous consumer of American media. So somewhere between watching Resident Evil with her and having an ABBA karaoke party in our classroom, I started to view her like a second mom. And then I also found some joy in the little quirks of living in a rural community. On most days, at around 4:30 when I got home from school, the afternoon heat would break and there'd be just this massive monsoon, and I'd sit on my landlord's porch drinking tea and watching the rain come down so much that the ground couldn't even hold it all. And then my favorite by far was on Friday evenings after prayer, the villagers would have a night market in my town. And so I'd walk the 1 kilometer stretch of road from my apartment to the center of the village. And it would be right after the storm broke, so the clouds would open up and there'd be just the most brilliant sunsets. And I'd get to the center of town and there'd be music playing and laughter, and kids would come up and hand me exotic fruits to try, and there would be locals selling like live fish flopping on ice and knockoff Coco Chanel handbags and bootleg DVDs from around the world. And in that space, I was really able to stop thinking of myself in this Western individualist mindset and see my place within the collective of my community. And that was enough to make me feel settled for about half of the year. But then one morning I was reading the news and I saw a headline that caught my eye that a 17-year-old named Naveen, about 2 hours from where I was living, had been beaten and branded and raped and killed by 6 of his high school classmates who thought that he was gay. And in that moment, all that anxiety I had shed off came flooding back into my cheeks. And I, for the next couple weeks, would get to school every day and not be able to concentrate on anything. And Rose, in her motherly glory, noticed something was wrong. So one day she came up to me and said, "Nate, we're leaving school early. I'm taking you to lunch." I was like, "Oh, okay, I'll take any excuse I can get." So when we were in the car, as any good mom would, she started to pester me a little bit and say, Nate, what are you hiding? I know there's something on your mind. I'm here for you. You can tell me anything. And I was sitting in her passenger seat just shaking with the image of Naveen in the back of my head. And I said to myself, well, Rose clearly cares about me. And I want to still have a friendship with her after I leave Malaysia, so she's going to find out. Maybe I should tell her. Maybe this could be a chance for me to help her understand. So I set 2 ground rules. I said, first of all, this has to stay between you and me. And secondly, you must promise me that you believe me when I say that what I'm about to tell you has nothing to do with my teaching of our male students. Because that's an all too real assumption that's made about queer educators. Fortunately, Rose accepted, and I told her. And she responded the only way she knew how. She said, well, Nate, it's okay you have a disease. I'm your mentor. I'm here to help you. I paused it. I said, all right, to be clear, I don't want to change. It's taken me this long just to like myself where I'm at. I'm telling you this because I care about you, and I know where you come from. You might not be able to accept it, but I'd love for you to just try and understand. And so she started throwing out every argument in the book. I'd heard them all before. Oh, you're so handsome and smart and funny, you could have any girl you wanted. Or don't you want to pass your genes on to the next generation? I brushed it off. And so finally she said, okay, Nate, I will pray for you tonight when I get home to change. And I stopped her again, and I reminded her. I said, I don't want to change, Rose, but I'm grateful that you want to pray for me. So if you're going to pray for me, why not pray for something we both want? Pray for me to be happy. I want you to be happy, right? And I want to be happy. Do you want me to be happy? She said yes. So she agreed. And just that one conversation was really enough to help us break through some of those walls. And for the rest of the year, we had a number of great conversations about my identity. And while Rose never fully understood, she was always willing to listen. And for that, I don't know that I'll ever be able to explain to her, even now, how grateful I am to her that she did that and put herself in that space of trying to understand where I was coming from. Needless to say, though, when I got back to my community in America, it was a huge sigh of relief, and I committed myself in coming back to spend the rest of my life fighting for equity so that no other kids, whether they're here in this country or abroad, have to feel that anxiety I felt. And then, about 2 months after I got home, I got a text from Rose, and Rose said, Nate, I get it. I was like, you get what? I get what you mean. I get how you feel. How do you get it, Rose? Well, I was at the night market last night, and I stopped by that bootleg DVD stall, and I found a copy of this movie called Love, Simon. And I bought it, and I watched it, and I cried, Nate. I know what you feel now. You are Simon. Now, Love, Simon is a pretty Hollywood, glamorized vision of what it means to come out in America. But in that moment, I was just so touched that she had gone out of her way to do that I just said, yeah, Rose, yeah, I'm Simon. Who cares? And she responded, well, I love Simon too. So no one of us can change all hearts and minds. But if each of us can help change one person's perspective, help them understand a little bit better, then collectively, we can be the monsoon, flooding the world with change so great the ground can't even hold it all. And when those clouds finally part, believe me, you've never seen such a beautiful sky. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing yourselves with all of us today. You are all amazing. So I'd like to invite you all to join me across the street at the Government Conference Center for a reception where there's food and drink, and you can have the chance to meet our amazing storytellers. But before we go, I just want to close with a thought. Today, we all got to experience the power of storytelling firsthand. I am never more inspired and moved by our community than when I am working on Double Take. It's why this is my favorite event of the year. Working on this program has been the honor of my career. Thank you for sharing in this experience, and I hope you leave inspired to seek out other stories, and equally importantly, inspired to share your own with all of us. Thank you.